Paul, I thought you had a brother. Or, oh my God, or are you
Oh
Paul's
yeah,
brother?
my first name is William, believe it or not,
Do the
and I
people
go by my middle name.
Okay, I thought it
Yeah.
was like, does Paul have a identical twin brother?
I
Yeah, sorry, that's confusing. I don't know why I'm William Dingus right now.
know. Paul, do the rest of your constituents know that
No, this is a secret that can't get out. I'm renaming myself there.
this man was the president of a residential dormitory at Rice University and he ran as Paul Dingus?
It's the only reason anybody's ever let me do anything is because they don't think I'm named William.
Ted Cruz is named Raphael.
Where did the Ted come from? Is that his middle name too?
I think so. I know Mitt Romney is the same thing. Mitt is his middle name.
What's his first name?
I don't remember his.
Willard. Sorry. Okay. Yeah.
Is that Mitt Romney's first name?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I've definitely taken a lot of time. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to our wonderful host, Jake Jackson.
Hello, folks. Thank you for joining. Before we get started, we're going to just run through a few logistical items and soon pass it off to Michael. Very excited for it. So this event will be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel. So some folks are probably watching from there. Only our speaker will be pinned for discussion and be visible during the recording. However, any audio from audience questions will be recorded and uploaded onto YouTube, as well as any video during the Q&A section, which we'll have at the end. So if you're not comfortable displaying your name or being on video, feel free to turn your video off during the Q&A portion at the end. For now, you can drop any questions in the chat and we will get to those at the end. Closed captions are available. You can turn them on by clicking the CC button in the bottom of the Zoom. Now, before we dive into the presentation, I'd like to take the time to acknowledge that Bluebonnet Data is an organization of individuals residing on the traditional homelands of the people of Munsee Lenape, Pawtucket, Narragansett, Massachusetts, Kikai-Poi, Humanos, Tawakani, Wichita, Lipan Apache, and Chickasaw nations. Our speaker today is an individual residing on the territory of Chen, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of the sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Mawekma, I'm misreading the line. Mawekma Ohlone tribe and other familial descendants of the Verona Band. As a remotely based organization with employees and partners who are geographically scattered across these lands, we acknowledge that Native and Indigenous people are the rightful stewards of the lands that we reside on, and that there is a deep-rooted and continuous relationship between them and their territories. We acknowledge our history of colonization and genocide of Native and Indigenous people and their lands. The cities that we reside in are home to over 33,340 American Indians today. With that being said, I will start by introducing myself and our speaker today. I'm Jake Jackson, tech manager at Bluebonnet Data. If you're not familiar with who we are, we're a political nonprofit focused on recruiting and matching data talents to down-ballot progressive campaigns through a fellowship program. Our conversation today will discuss how our careers are some of the best opportunities to improve the lives of others. If we dedicate the 80,000 hours of our career to working on the world's greatest challenges, we can have an incredible impact while having a more meaningful and fulfilling career. This talk will provide guidance and resources for identifying outstanding opportunities for impact and for having a socially impactful career, based on research from 80,000 Hours, a career advice nonprofit. Also, all attendees will be able to get a free book, which we can drop a link about in the chat. So without further ado, very excited to introduce our esteemed guest, former Bluebonnet Fellow, current Bluebonnet Fellow. Michael Chen is a recent graduate from Georgia Tech with a degree in computer science. He was a summer 2021 Bluebonnet Data Fellow and is currently a visiting scholar at the Center for Human Compatible AI at Berkeley, working on a project training language models to understand ethical scenarios. So without further ado, Michael, take it away.
Thanks so much, Shig. All right. Yeah, so to give a quick introduction, I'm a current, recently graduated from Georgia Tech, currently a visiting scholar at the Center for Human Compatible AI, or CHAI. And CHAI is a research group based at UC Berkeley, led by Stuart Russell, and its mission is to advance technical and conceptual research to reduce the risk that advanced AI systems have catastrophic outcomes for humanity. I'll get into the topic of AI safety later in this presentation, but if you're looking for a summer research opportunity in AI, I definitely recommend applying to the summer internship at CHAI. Oh yeah, and my pronouns are he, him, his. Last year, I was involved with organizing workshops for Queer Hack, that's queer_hack, a beginner-friendly hackathon by for LGBTQ plus students. And this year, I also helped organize an AI policy hackathon along with Columbia Effective Altruism and Roosevelt at Columbia. So last year, I also had the opportunity to attend the Out for Undergrad Tech conference, which I thought was a great opportunity to connect with recruiters and other queer students in tech. Applications for this year are unfortunately closed, but you could apply for next year's conference, and I recommend checking out the very similarly named Out in Tech, which has a cool Slack community and mentorship program. And in university, I was also involved with a club called Bits of Good, which develops web apps for nonprofits and is part of a collective of similar clubs called Hack for Impact. And I also started a club called Effective Altruism at Georgia Tech, which aims to empower students to tackle pressing global issues. And then, yeah, let's get started with the talk. So imagine if one day you see a burning building with a small child inside. You run into the blaze, pick up the child, and carry them to safety. You'd be a hero. Now, imagine that this happened to you every year. You'd save dozens of lives over the course of your career. It sounds like an odd world, but current evidence suggests it is the world that many people live in. If you were to earn the typical income in the US and donate 10% of your earnings each year to the Against Malaria Foundation, you'll probably save dozens of lives over your lifetime. All right, so let's get into a pop quiz. So take a moment to think about what you would estimate for this question. How much does the average college graduate in the US make in their first job per year? You can also write a guess in the chat. I'll give you like 10 seconds. The answer is $55,260. So apparently there's this recent news article which said that college students actually expect to make $100,000 a year after graduation. Not quite that much, but still a pretty significant sum. Okay, and then if you make $55,260 per year, what percent of the global population do you earn more than? Take a few seconds, write a guess. Yeah, Paul, good job. All right, yeah, the answer is 98.8%. So this is based on like an individualized household income and adjusted for factors like differences in cost of living between different countries. So due to the massive global inequities that exist in our world, an individual income of $55,000 happens to place you just around the global 1%, and you'd earn over 19 times the global median. And when we look at the big picture, this is a whole lot of money, and with it, we can have a huge impact. So over 6,000 people in the effective altruism community have taken the Giving What We Can pledge to donate 10% of our income every year, myself included. And even if you donated 10% of that $55,000 salary, you'd still be in the global 1%. And if that charity goes to some of the most effective charities, you can expect to at least save someone's life every year. And this figure is based on careful analysis done by an organization called GiveWell, using rigorous evidence-based on randomized controlled trials, the gold standard for effectiveness research. And some of these charities that are able to save lives remarkably cost effectively include the Against Malaria Foundation or the Malaria Consortium, which help protect kids in sub-Saharan Africa from getting malaria, or the Helen Keller International's Vitamin A Supplementation Program, or New Incentives, which provides incentives to complete an infant's vaccination schedule. And yeah, so those are some charities in the space of global poverty. But if you're interested in supporting other causes such as climate change mitigation, animal welfare, or mental health, I'd recommend checking out research by an organization called Founders Pledge. And they have some excellent comprehensive reports trying to identify the most cost-effective charities in these areas. And I want to do caveat this and say that a lot of people would not be in a position to commit much money to donations. And I think that's totally valid. Like financial security is really valuable, and you should do things like pay down debt or accumulate a few months of runway before committing lots of money to donations. All right, so I've discussed impact opportunities available through philanthropy, mainly to illustrate in a concrete and quantifiable way the kind of global impact that you could have. But I think an even better opportunity would be making an impact through your career by working on an important problem. So we spend the 80,000 hours of our careers working on all sorts of things. So you can think of the difference between spending those 80,000 hours on something important or something less important, or even a career that is like neutral or like maybe a little harmful. So for example, a lot of people dream of working at Facebook, but we've all heard about the recent Facebook leaks. We know what the company itself thinks of the effects of its platform. So yeah, the social media website is damaging for users' mental health, destabilizing political discourse, and much more. So instead of like spending 80,000 hours getting users hooked to the site, you could be spending that time on addressing climate change or improving public policy or developing new medical treatments. And I think we should strive to have as much of a positive impact as possible. This doesn't mean just not taking a job that does harm. Research shows that the most impactful careers are significantly more impactful than the average career. Yeah, I guess we observe a lot of heavy tail distributions, such as this graph on the right, which shows years of life saved per $1,000. And as you can see, when we work on the most pressing issues with effective solutions, we can expect our impact to be many times greater than your average job. All right, so let me check the time. It is, okay. We're almost to concrete examples of impactful careers. But before we present them, let's explain our methodology for evaluating impact. So I'll discuss 3 criteria when measuring the importance of an issue, or I guess more like how much impact you'd have by working on it. and a fourth criterion for careers. So the first one is scale. An issue scale is the magnitude of its effect on people. This may be because it affects many people, is a really big deal to those it affects, or both. So for example, climate change is huge in scale, affecting every person on this planet and causing trillions in economic damage. Second issue is tractability. An issue is tractable when we can make a real difference given our limited resources. So to go back to climate change, the issue of a lack of climate, let's see. So yeah, the lack of affordable clean energy is a tractable solution, as we've seen significant strides in the cost effectiveness of solar energy. Third is neglectedness. While climate change can use more attention, it is talked about in the news a lot, and we have billions of dollars being invested in addressing it. So yeah, let's see. So you might want to find opportunities that still have some low-hanging fruit, so you can maximize the value of your efforts, illustrated by the graph on the right. We're concerned about the value of our marginal impact, the impact that we would have with our additional contributions. And if someone else would fill in if we chose to do something else, or if we don't have much more to offer relative to the work already being done, we aren't adding value. That is to say, I think climate change probably is a pretty effective thing to work on, even if it is less neglected than some other issues such as pandemic preparedness. But yeah, last criterion is personal fit, which is about how good you'd be at the job. So it's worth noting that it is really hard to tell in advance how good you'd be at something if you haven't really tried it before. And I think one mistake students often make is not exploring their options enough and assuming that they'd only be good at this one thing. And instead, we should try to have a growth mindset and understand that our skills are not fixed. All right. In the interest of time, I think I'll skip this slides. All right, so we've talked a lot about the big picture, so let's narrow it down to 3 concrete ways we can use our careers to make an impact. So the first thing you can do, regardless of what company you choose, is setting up for ethical practices within your workplace. So technology created by people working in like data or tech, especially at big tech, is used by millions and billions of people. And we know that firms, if left alone, will put profits over impact. So for example, oil companies like Exxon covered up reports by their scientists predicting global warming decades ago. And policy and the public are slow to react, but workers have a good opportunity to ensure that we develop technology that makes the world a better place. And even if we cannot directly change the minds of decision makers at these firms, if you refuse to work for companies that cause harm, that will directly affect their bottom line. And we've seen that when tech workers organize, real change has been made. So walkouts at firms like Google have led to the cancellation of many dangerous projects with the military and police. And I think another thing you could do is trying to organize a workplace group, such as one discussing effective altruism or another topic that you think is important and want to raise awareness of. And like we mentioned earlier, we should aim higher than making sure our employer doesn't do harm, but this is a great place to start. And next is philanthropy. So research shows that after, I think like $75,000 a year, that kind of salary, like additional earnings have a pretty minimal effect on well-being. But in contrast, this money can be life-changing for other people when spent wisely. So one effective charity I'd like to highlight is the Against Malaria Foundation. And you can use the aforementioned scale, tractability, neglectedness framework to evaluate this opportunity. So malaria is a large-scale issue. In 2019, there are 230 million cases and 450,000 deaths. However, it is highly tractable. So this charity distributes insecticide-treated bed nets to households in sub-Saharan Africa to prevent mosquito bites. And these bed nets are pretty cheap, so your donation can buy a lot. Economists have conducted high-quality research evaluating the effect these have on preventing infections, and using randomized controlled trials for causal inference, they find that for a few $1,000s, you could fund several hundred bed nets and expect to save a life. And then some other charities are Give Directly, which simply gives cash to the world's poorest people, allowing them to spend the money on what they need the most. And another charity is Evidence Action, which funds clinics to treat parasitic worms. And one amazing outcome researchers have studied is the effects on education. So when children are not debilitated by these parasites, they are able to attend school for longer. And for the price of funding one child's education in the US for 1 year, you can provide deworming treatments that enable over 400 years of additional schooling in sub-Saharan Africa. Yeah, so these are just some examples of some cool philanthropic opportunities. Let's see. Okay. And then another topic is, or another way to make an impact is working on an important issue. And this is probably the best way you can have an impact given how much time you spend at your job. So looking into the centuries, I'll talk about two causes here, artificial alignment, and then briefly about pandemic preparedness. But I think, like directly working on other causes like climate change mitigation, also really great. So looking into this century's future, one of the most important issues for CS majors is artificial alignment, which is about aligning the objectives of AI systems with human values. So the way AI systems are trained is that they are trained to maximize an objective, of course. And unfortunately, they often find creative and undesirable ways to achieve this. So here we have a boat which is supposed to complete a race, but since it's just been trained to get a high score, it ends up just going in circles, trying to get all these green blocks and setting itself on fire in the process. So yeah, you can kind of see that specifying a reward for your AI is not going to get you good solutions necessarily. And we've seen how social media algorithms in the real world tasked with maximizing user engagement promote contentious and false content. And while we can see that this is bad for users and society, it is what maximizes ad revenue for a company like Facebook. And likewise, YouTube's recommendation algorithm, which is trained to suggest content to keep users on the website for as long as possible, ended up recommending increasingly extreme content and proliferating misinformation. Language models such as GPT-3, trained to predict the next word in a piece of text, can be prompted to produce offensive content and leak personal information from the training data. We might hope that more advanced models will naturally be better behaved, but actually larger language models are less truthful and more likely to output plausible misinformation. And as AI becomes more capable, companies will be economically incentivized to put it in charge of more and more decisions and just like automate more things in the world. AI will be used to guide corporate decisions, evaluate public policies, and automate our weapon systems. Our society uses systems like capitalism, democracy, religion, and more to determine we can trust others to make decisions for us, but machines aren't constrained by these systems and will become more and more independent. Yeah, so this is an issue that's massive in scale in every part of our society. AI would become important decision makers, and we have to ensure that the solutions they find are designed to benefit all people and are not taking advantage of poorly defined goals. And the issue is tractable as humans are designing AI systems, and we get to determine how we will use and design these AI systems. The field is in an early stage and can go in many directions. And some roles in this space would be like machine learning research, or research engineering, software engineering, conceptual research, or governance research, or operations, communications. Yeah, there are a lot of ways to help with the issue. I've given a very like cursory overview, but yeah, hopefully that provides an intro. And yeah, another issue is risks from future pandemics. So COVID-19 was like quite bad. I think we all know about that. But future pandemics could be significantly worse, much more lethal, especially as access to synthetic biology becomes easier. Risks of lab leaks or intentional development of more lethal viruses could be more common. And we kind of already see the deliberate engineering of like more lethal viruses in gain of function research. And then it is possible for such viruses to be leaked. I think like the first SARS virus was from that, or maybe I'm totally off. But yeah, there are definitely lots of ways we could reduce risks, such as improving access to PPE, developing technology for rapid deployment of vaccines, screening synthesis requests against known pathogens, and increasing national level oversight of dual use research, which could be used for either good or bad. Yeah, so there are roles here in software engineering, web development, biology, physical engineering, and material sciences. And I'm happy to share more resources on this topic and the previous one. And yeah, another example of an important issue is computational social science work. So there are many open questions or challenges in public policy, economics, and other fields where computational techniques bring new understanding. For example, one professor at Georgia Tech, Jacob Abernethy, has a company which uses AI to analyze municipal water infrastructure data to identify areas that are likely to have lead pipes. And his firm, Blue Conduit, has helped Flint and Detroit accelerate their lead removal programs. So issues in social science are high in scale. The public policy affects the everyday lives of millions or perhaps even billions of people. And it's crucial that we have the best possible rules and regulations. And it's fairly tractable as well. We have seen massive shifts in policy frameworks in light of new evidence. And the Federal Reserve is a great example of a hugely influential institution that has radically changed their policies in light of new evidence, weighing full employment over inflation concerns. Yeah, and if you want to work in computational social science, you could be a data analyst, software engineer, or a data architect. And you can work in government, academia, think tanks, companies, public policy divisions, and more. All right, gonna skip this slide. So yeah, I would definitely recommend browsing some of these social impact related job boards. Highly recommend the 80,000 hours jobs board. I would say that I think it does make sense to like kind of just like work at a regular internship or company, even if it isn't directly impactful, if it like is a great way to build skills so that you can really excel and contribute to an organization that is working on important problems. Yeah, it makes sense to try to maximize the impact over the course of your career. And you don't have to feel like you have to be immediately making an impact. All right. Yeah, so if you found this talk interesting, here are some resources to get further engaged. So I'd recommend subscribing to the 80,000 Hours newsletter, which has resources on choosing an impactful career, as well as like regular career advice. And yeah, they also have I think it's about twice a month. And they also send like job postings, which is pretty cool. You can also sign up for the Introductory Effective Altruism Program, which is a free 8-week program to like discuss with people around the world, other people who care deeply about improving the lives of others in the most effective ways they can. And yeah, you can get a free book. I think link was dropped in the chat later. Oh, sorry, earlier. But yeah, yes, free career advising for 80,000 hours. Yeah, that's all. Does anyone have any questions?
What made you want to do this presentation / like inspired you to start giving this presentation? I know that this is not the first time you've talked about this topic, so I was just curious.
Yeah, so actually prepared this presentation along with another member of Effective Altruism at Georgia Tech last fall. Yeah, and I just saw that Bluebonnet was looking for presenters, and I thought it would be a cool opportunity.
Sorry, I have another question. So I love that one of the challenging problems that you can be working on would be ethical AI. And this is what you are actually doing right now. Can you tell us a little bit about what goes into the research for moral decision making?
Yeah, so I can discuss a couple of different, I guess, research directions in the field of AI alignment more generally. So I guess the project I'm working on is more about like, how can we have AI that understands human morals, either normative ethics or common sense ethics? Because I guess like by default, we might expect to have AIs that are, really good at understanding how to do things like keep users engaged on a website for a really long time, or produce writing that humans like, for example, but don't really understand human preferences or values on a deeper level. Another issue is, let's see. So instead of like having let's say, very certain objective for an AI, Stuart Russell, who kind of wrote the textbook on AI, has been proposing a new approach where AIs are uncertain about the reward function that they should be maximizing for, because it doesn't really have definite confidence in like its understanding of human values, and it shouldn't. Yeah, I think another issue is that is the issue of corrigibility. So if we have an AI that is maximizing for an objective, it is kind of incentivized for people to like resist changes to that objective. If we are thinking of a highly autonomous AI, so like for example, in a reinforcement learning environment, you might find that an agent would resist attempts to any attempts to change its reward function. So yeah, corrigibility is just about the problem of how can we have an AI that plays nice, doesn't resist these sorts of attempts, because we probably wouldn't have the right reward function. Yeah, another issue would be interpretability. So deep learning models are just like really hard to understand, kind of a black box, very complex. So then we can't really verify whether it does have undesirable behaviors, like maybe it learned the wrong goals or is learning to be deceptive. And so we'd like to have interpretability tools to detect and fix these behaviors. So yeah, that's a quick overview there.
Thank you so much. Do you have any last words or words of advice that you would give to the group before Jake closes us out?
Yeah, let's see. Off the top of my head, probably not gonna be great advice, but I would say definitely balance working hard and having fun.
Thank you for the wise words, Michael. Truly, thank you for the presentation, though. Thank you, Evan, for coming. We've shared Michael's contact information and some other resources, so do please follow up with those things if you're interested. Thank you again, everyone. With that, we'll close out.
Thank you.